On a cold February morning, I boarded a red-eye flight from Kabul to Miami, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and my father's pocket watch. I'm Diana Washington, 62 years old, a black woman who'd just completed 40 years in the United States Army. I thought I was flying home to surprise my son. Instead, I arrived just in time to watch him die. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. The flight attendant offered me a blanket somewhere over the Atlantic. Through the window, I watched the thin line of dawn stretch across the water, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink. In my jacket pocket, my father's pocket watch pressed against my chest. The same watch he'd given me before my first deployment in 1985. "Always come home, Diana," he'd whispered. And I had, time and time again. But this homecoming was different. I hadn't told anyone I was retiring. Not my commanding officer, not my colleagues, not even my son, James Marcus Washington. After 4 decades of service, from a scared 18-year-old private to a full-bird colonel, I was finally done. And I decided to surprise James in person rather than over another pixelated video call from some remote base. It had been almost 2 years since I'd seen him face to face. 2 years of schedules that never quite aligned, of video calls canceled by my urgent military matters or his work emergencies. Our last call had been 4 weeks ago. He'd looked tired, thinner than I remembered, his hazel eyes shadowed with something I couldn't quite name. "Just work stress, Mom," he'd said when I asked. "Big project deadline, nothing to worry about." I'd believed him because I needed to, because acknowledging that something might be wrong with my only child while I was 7,000 miles away was unbearable. James was 35 years old, a successful architect in Naples, Florida. He'd inherited his father's talent for design and his mother's determination. Michael, my late husband James's father, had died in combat 20 years ago. A roadside bomb in Iraq, leaving me to raise our 14-year-old son alone while juggling my military career. We'd survived that loss together, James and I. We'd learned to lean on each other across continents and time zones. Or so I'd thought. The taxi from Miami Airport to Naples cost me $283, a number I remember because I almost protested until I reminded myself I could afford it now. 40 years of military pay, carefully saved, carefully invested. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable, secure, and eager to see the look on James's face when I knocked on his door. The drive took 3 hours and 40 minutes. We passed through Miami's gleaming downtown, then into the flat green expanse of the Everglades, and finally into the manicured wealth of Naples. The driver, a quiet man named Carlos who hadn't asked unnecessary questions, turned onto James's street just as the morning sun climbed high enough to burn away the last of the dew. The neighborhood looked exactly as I remembered from the photos James had sent when he bought the house 5 years ago. Well-maintained homes with neat lawns, trimmed hedges, and expensive cars in driveways. The kind of place that whispered success and stability. Except for James's house. Something was wrong immediately. The grass had grown wild, reaching halfway up the windows in places, obscuring the stone pathway to the front door. The mailbox at the curb tilted at a drunken angle, stuffed so full that envelopes had spilled onto the ground, yellowing in the Florida sun. Every curtain was drawn tight, the cheerful blue paint I'd helped him choose during a rare visit now peeling in long strips. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a place that had been abandoned. "This is the right address?" Carlos asked, uncertainty in his voice. "Yes," I said, though my chest was tightening. "This is it." I paid him, added a generous tip, and stood on the sidewalk as his taxi pulled away. The morning air was already thick with humidity despite the early hour, pressing against my skin like a damp blanket. I was about to walk up the overgrown path when a voice called from across the street. "Colonel Washington, is that you?" I turned to see a white woman in her early 60s standing in the driveway across the street, a watering can in her hand. Margaret Patterson. James had mentioned her often, the kind neighbor who'd welcomed him to the street, who brought him casserole when he worked late, who kept an eye on his house during his business trips. Even from this distance, I could see how pale her face had become, how her eyes had widened at the sight of me. "Hello, Margaret," I said, crossing the street toward her. Her garden was immaculate, roses climbing white trellises, bird feeders hanging from the eaves, every blade of grass perfectly trimmed. She set down her watering can with trembling hands, both of them now fidgeting with the hem of her gardening apron. "Diana," she said, my first name strange on her lips after years of calling me Colonel in our occasional phone conversations. "You don't know, do you?" My voice remained steady, 40 years of military training held firm, but my fingers tightened around my father's watch in my pocket. "Know what, Margaret?" She glanced back at James's house, then lowered her voice, even though no one else was around. "James has been in the ICU at Naples General for 2 weeks now. They took him by ambulance in the middle of the night. I heard the sirens, saw the lights. It was—" She stopped, looking down at her dirt-stained garden shoes. "It was bad, Diana. Real bad." The world tilted slightly, but I locked my knees, kept my spine straight. "What happened?" "Cancer," Margaret whispered the word like it might contaminate the morning air. "That's all I know. Stomach cancer, I think someone said. Advanced. They rushed him out of here at 2 a.m. 14 days ago, and I haven't seen him since." 14 days. James had been hospitalized for 14 days, and no one had called me. Not the hospital, not his work, not all. "And Vanessa?" I asked, thinking of my daughter-in-law. James had married Vanessa Brooks 3 years ago after a whirlwind 6-month courtship. I'd met her exactly twice, once at the wedding, once during a brief Christmas visit. A striking woman with sleek black hair, designer clothes, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Something like disgust flashed across Margaret's face. "What about Vanessa?" I pressed. "She's been in the Keys," Margaret said, the words tumbling out in a rush now. "On a yacht, posting pictures all over Facebook, parties, shopping sprees, expensive restaurants, all while James has been—" Her voice trailed off, unable to finish. The air seemed to thicken around me. I must have swayed slightly because Margaret reached out to steady me, her rough gardener's hands gripping my arm. "Naples General Hospital," she said. "5th floor ICU. I've been bringing in his mail, leaving it on the kitchen counter, but—" She shook her head. "I don't think anyone's been home since they took him." I don't remember thanking her. I don't remember getting my phone out to call a taxi. One moment I was standing in Margaret's perfect garden with the scent of roses in the air. The next I was in the back of a different cab, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Naples General," I told the driver. "Emergency entrance, fast as you can." The hospital was a sprawling white complex that gleamed in the late morning sun. I pushed through the sliding glass doors into air sharp with disinfectant, the kind that clings to your clothes long after you've left. My boots, still my military boots, I hadn't had time to change into civilian shoes, clicked against the polished floor as I strode to the reception desk. "James Marcus Washington," I said to the nurse behind the counter. "ICU patient. I'm his mother, Diana Washington." The nurse's eyes flickered with recognition when I mentioned his name. Something in her expression made my stomach drop. "5th floor," she said quietly. "Room 512. The ICU waiting room is just off the elevator. I'll call up to let them know you're coming." The elevator ride felt endless. I gripped my father's pocket watch so hard the metal dug into my palm, leaving a circular imprint on my skin. My mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. James had always been healthy, active, strong, took after his father in that way. What could have happened in the mere month since our last video call? The hallway of the ICU was quiet, except for the steady mechanical beeping of monitors and the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes on the polished floor. Room 512 had a small window in the door, but the curtain inside was drawn, hiding whatever waited for me. I knocked gently, then pushed the door open without waiting for a response. The monitor sounds hit me first, loud, inescapable, the artificial rhythm of machines keeping someone alive. Then I saw him. My son lay in the hospital bed, and for a moment, I didn't recognize him. His skin was sallow, stretched too tight across his cheekbones, making his face look like a skull covered in wax paper. His frame, once broad and strong like his father's, had shrunk beneath the thin hospital gown. Tubes and wires traced over him like a cruel map, leading to machines that beeped and hummed with artificial life. "Are you family?" I turned to see a man in a white coat standing by the monitors. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes behind wire-framed glasses. "I'm his mother," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Colonel Diana Washington. What happened to my son?" "Dr. Angela Foster," I read her name on the badge clipped to her coat, gestured to the single chair beside James's bed, but I remained standing. "Mr. Washington has advanced gastric cancer," she said, and I could tell from her directness that she'd delivered bad news many times before. Stage 4. It's metastasized to his liver and lymph nodes. She paused, glancing down at James's still form. If we'd caught it earlier, there might have been options, but it's too far progressed now. We're keeping him comfortable. The words felt unreal, as if they belonged to someone else's life, someone else's son. How long has he been here? I asked. 2 weeks, no visitors except one friend who came 3 times in the first few days. After that, she trailed off. His wife, I said, though I already knew the answer. Has she been notified? Dr. Foster's expression tightened. We've called the emergency contact numbers on file multiple times. Mrs. Washington answered the first few days, said she was out of town and would come when she returned. After that, our calls went straight to voicemail. I moved closer to the bed, my fingers brushing the back of James's hand. His skin was cold, the veins fragile beneath my touch. Up close, I could see the bones of his wrists, the way his wedding ring had become loose enough to slide down his finger. James, I whispered. Baby, I'm here. His eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, they opened, and I saw those hazel eyes, Michael's eyes, looking up at me with a recognition that made my heart shatter. Mom? His voice was barely a whisper, cracked and dry. You're really here? I'm here, baby, I sadly said, taking his hand fully in mine now, careful not to disturb the IV line. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I wanted to call you. My phone... He trailed off, too weak to finish. Shh, don't worry about that now, I said, falling back into the rhythm of comforting him, just as I had when he was small and woke from nightmares about his father. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. His eyes locked with mine, and for a moment there was a sudden clarity shining through the medication haze. His fingers squeezed mine with surprising strength. I love you, Mom, he whispered, his voice faint as breath. I'm sorry I didn't... Before he could finish, the monitor's steady beeping changed. One long, piercing tone that made Dr. Foster move with practiced urgency, pressing a button on the wall that brought nurses rushing into the room. Code Blue, ICU, room 512, a voice announced over the speaker system. Someone guided me away from the bed, out into the hall. I stood frozen outside the door, hearing the flurry of commands, the shuffle of feet, the rhythmic thud of hands against my son's chest as they tried to restart his heart. The hallway tilted slightly. I pressed my palm flat against the wall to steady myself, my other hand clutching my father's watch so hard I thought it might break. I'd faced enemy fire in 3 different countries. I'd made life-or-death decisions that affected entire units of soldiers. I'd stood in the rubble of bombed-out buildings and kept my composure. But nothing in 40 years of military service, had prepared me for this moment. Minutes crawled by, though it felt like hours. Nurses and doctors rushed in and out of room 512. The Code Blue announcement repeated twice more. And then, finally, the door opened. Dr. Foster stepped out. Her shoulders were slumped, her eyes red. I'm so sorry, Colonel Washington, she said. We did everything we could. The watch in my hand felt heavier than it ever had. My father had given it to me with the words, always come home. I had come home, but I was too late. The drive back to James's house was a blur of palm trees and blue sky that I didn't see. Carlos, the same taxi driver from that morning, summoned by the hospital, kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, perhaps concerned by my silence or the way I stared straight ahead, seeing nothing. The hospital had given me James's personal effects in a clear plastic bag. His wallet, a watch I'd given him for his 30th birthday, his phone with a dead battery, and a simple gold wedding band that had become too loose for his wasting fingers. I clutched the bag on my lap, my thumb rubbing absently over the curve of his watch through the plastic. When Carlos pulled up to James's house, I paid him without registering the amount and stood on the sidewalk, watching his car drive away. The wind chime hanging from the porch, a gift I'd sent from Japan during one deployment, twisted silently in the still air, its music stolen by disuse and weather. The keys to James's house were in the plastic bag with his other belongings. They felt foreign in my hand as I stepped onto the porch, dead leaves skittering across the wooden planks. When I pushed the door open, a wave of stale air hit me, the kind that settles when no one has cared for a place in weeks. The living room was dim, curtains pulled tight against the sunlight. Empty glasses sat on the coffee table, a thin layer of dust coating their rims. A half-empty bottle of scotch stood beside them, cap missing. The framed photos I remembered seeing during my last visit, James's college graduation, our fishing trip to Montana, his wedding day, were gone from the mantel, leaving lighter rectangles on the faded paint. In the kitchen, takeout containers and unwashed dishes were stacked haphazardly in the sink, a sour smell rising from them. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sign of life. On the counter, I found the pile of mail Margaret had mentioned, leaning against the wall like a small paper tower. I tore through the envelopes with methodical precision, my military training taking over even as grief threatened to overwhelm me. Utility shut-off warnings. Overdue credit card statements. 3 different cards, all maxed out. Late mortgage notices. Not 1, but 2 mortgages on this house. My chest tightened as I flipped through them. James had never been careless with money. Even as a teenager, he'd saved his allowance, planning purchases weeks in advance, balancing his checkbook to the penny. The disarray around me, the mounting bills, none of it fit the son I knew. A framed photo lay face down on the counter. I picked it up, wiping dust from the glass with my thumb. It was from their wedding day. James in his suit, Vanessa in her flowing white dress, both smiling at the camera. She was striking, I'd give her that. Sleek black hair, practiced smile, designer shoes that had probably cost more than my monthly pension check. I set the photo down, unable to reconcile the smiling woman in the image with someone who would abandon my son in his greatest time of need. The house had 3 bedrooms, the master, a guest room, and a small room James had set up as a home office. I moved to the office first, needing to understand what had happened here. Papers littered the desk, some crumpled, others folded neatly. A laptop sat closed at the center, its charging cable dangling empty to the floor. Among the papers, I found receipts. The first one made me sit down hard in the desk chair. Yacht rental in Key West, $75,000 for 1 week, dated 9 days after James had been admitted to the ICU. Another from Cartier in Miami, $49,800 for jewelry. 2 days after the yacht rental. Dinners at oceanfront resorts, $4,000, $6,000, $8,000. Luxury clothing boutiques, $12,000, $15,000, $23,000. All charged to James's credit card. All dated within the 2 weeks he'd been lying in that hospital bed, alone and dying. I sat in James's chair, the receipts trembling in my hands. Vanessa's face filled my mind, that practiced smile, the designer clothes, the way she'd barely looked at me during our brief meetings. I had tried to be welcoming when James introduced us, had pushed aside my concerns about their hasty engagement for his sake. I had trusted her to stand beside my son, to care for him when I couldn't be there. Instead, she'd been draining his accounts while he fought for his life alone. I pressed the receipts into a neat stack, each one a quiet accusation. Then I stood and continued my search. The master bedroom felt like an invasion of privacy, but I needed to understand. The king-sized bed was unmade, sheets tangled as if someone had left in a hurry. James's side, I could tell from the reading glasses on the nightstand, was relatively neat. Vanessa's side was chaos. Discarded clothes, empty shopping bags from Gucci and Prada, makeup items scattered across the surface of an ornate vanity. The closet told another story. James's clothes, the suits he wore to work, his weekend jeans and t-shirts, hung neatly on one side. Vanessa's side was half empty, expensive hangers tossed on the floor as if she'd packed in a rush, taking only her most valuable pieces. In the master bathroom, I found prescription bottles lined up on the counter like soldiers. I picked one up, reading the label. Hydrocodone, prescribed to James Marcus Washington 2 months ago. The bottle was nearly full. Another for anti-nausea medication, barely touched. A third for stomach acid, almost empty. He'd been sick longer than anyone realized, treating symptoms without knowing their cause. I returned to the kitchen, where the pile of mail waited like a silent witness. Sitting at the table, I sorted it methodically, creating separate stacks. Bills, personal correspondence, junk mail. Near the bottom of the pile, I found a letter from James's medical insurance company dated 3 weeks ago. It was a notification of claim denial. A CT scan and specialist consultation had been rejected as not medically necessary without prior authorization. The letter had been opened, then resealed sloppily with tape. Someone had read it and decided it wasn't important enough to act on. Or perhaps someone had deliberately delayed James's diagnosis. My hands were steady as I reached for my phone. Decades of military crisis management kept my emotions in check, even as rage built inside me like a gathering storm. Vanessa's number was still saved in my contacts from the wedding 3 years ago. For a moment, I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over her name. The weight of what I'd discovered pushed me forward. I tapped the call button and waited, switching to video. It rang once, twice, then connected. Vanessa's face appeared on my screen, framed by the blinding white of a yacht deck. Music thumped in the background, mingled with bursts of laughter from people I couldn't see. She was wearing oversized sunglasses, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, skin bronzed from days in the sun. In one hand, she held a champagne flute, the golden liquid catching the light. Behind her, people in swimwear danced and shouted over the wind and music. "Well, look who finally decided to call," she said, her smile bright and careless. "Did the military finally give you a day off, Diana?" I said nothing, simply watching her through the screen. The seconds stretched between us, long enough that her smile faltered slightly. "Is something wrong?" she finally asked, pushing her sunglasses to the top of her head. "You look different." "James is gone," I said flatly, my voice steadier than I expected. Her smile faltered for a heartbeat. Then she shrugged, taking a slow sip from her glass. "It was inevitable, you know. He'd been sick for a while. Nothing anyone could do." I felt the air tighten in my lungs, but I didn't let it show on my face. "And the charges on his card," I said quietly. "The yacht rental, the jewelry, the $75,000 while he was dying in the ICU. Her laugh was short, careless. "I'm his wife, Diana. What's his is mine. That's how marriage works." The ease with which she said it was almost more shocking than the words themselves. She didn't even try to pretend remorse or grief. I studied her face for a long second, memorizing every detail: the designer sunglasses, the gold hoops in her ears, the way one perfectly manicured hand lazily swirled her drink. "Enjoy the view while it lasts," I said quietly. She tilted her head as if she'd heard a compliment. "Oh, I will." "That," I said, leaning forward so my face filled her screen, "was your last party on my dime." I ended the call before she could respond, the image of her frozen mid-smirk lingering on the black screen. Setting the phone down, I reached for my father's pocket watch, the cool metal steadying me. Then I returned to James's office, because I knew there had to be more. My son had been many things, but he'd never been careless. And something told me he'd seen this coming. In the bottom drawer of his desk, beneath a stack of old architectural magazines, I found a manila envelope with my name written in James's distinctive handwriting. "For Mom. Open immediately." My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a letter and a USB drive. The letter was dated 4 weeks ago, right around our last video call. "Mom, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the cancer. I didn't want you to worry while you were finishing your service. You've sacrificed enough for me already. But there's something else, something worse. Vanessa isn't who we thought she was. She's been stealing from me, and when I confronted her about my diagnosis, she asked how long I had left and if my life insurance was paid up. Everything you need is on this drive. I've been gathering evidence for 3 months. Please, Mom, make sure she doesn't get away with this. And please don't blame yourself for not being here. You've always been there when it mattered. I love you, Mom. Always. James." I sat there in my son's chair, holding his final letter, and felt something shift inside me. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But beneath it now burned something else. Purpose. My son had died alone, betrayed by the woman who'd promised to love him. But he'd trusted me to find this, to fight this battle for him. I plugged the USB drive into his laptop. The password prompt appeared, and I tried the first thing that came to mind. My birthday, April 15th, 1963. The computer unlocked. James had always been sentimental that way. What I found on that drive would change everything. But that's a story for another moment. Right now, I sat in the gathering darkness of my son's abandoned office, my father's watch in one hand and my son's final gift in the other, and I made a promise to the empty room. "I'll make this right, James. Whatever it takes. I promise you that." Outside, the Florida sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Inside, a mother's grief was transforming into something far more dangerous. a soldier's determination to win one final mission. I stayed in James's office through the night, the glow of the laptop screen the only light in the darkness. Outside, the neighborhood settled into quiet. Dogs stopped barking, cars stopped passing, even the wind died down. Inside, I methodically clicked through folder after folder, my son's meticulous work revealing itself like layers of evidence in a military investigation. James had organized everything with the precision I'd taught him as a child. Each folder was labeled, each file dated, each piece of evidence cataloged as if he'd known exactly what I would need to build a case. The first folder was labeled Financial Evidence, January to present. I opened it and felt my breath catch. Bank statements going back 8 months, highlighted in yellow wherever Vanessa's name appeared. The pattern was unmistakable. Before their marriage, James's accounts showed steady deposits from his architectural firm, $8,200 every 2 weeks, and modest, reasonable expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, occasional dinners out, contributions to his 401k. Then came the wedding date, June 15th, 3 years ago. The change was immediate and devastating. 2 weeks after the wedding, withdrawal of $12,000 labeled VB Furniture. 1 month after, $18,500 labeled VB Wardrobe Upgrade. 2 months after, $23,000 labeled VB Medical Procedure, Plastic Surgeon. I sat back, processing this. Medical procedure? I pulled up my phone and searched the name of the clinic on the receipt. Premier Aesthetics of Miami. Not a medical facility, a luxury spa and cosmetic surgery center. James had been lied to from the start. I continued scrolling through the statements, watching the numbers escalate like a fever chart of financial abuse. Month 6, $31,000. VB, Mother's Emergency Surgery in California. Month 9, $47,000. VB, Roof Repairs after storm damage. Month 12, $56,000. VB, New car transmission plus labor. Each entry had James's notation beside it, his careful handwriting documenting what Vanessa had told him. And beside each of those, in red ink added later, were his corrections. VB, Mother's Emergency Surgery, Arrow, Cartier bracelet plus weekend in South Beach. Mother died 2 years ago. VB, Roof Repairs, Arrow, Designer Handbags, Gucci Store Miami, Roof never damaged. VB, Car transmission. Down payment on Rolex Daytona, car runs fine. My son had discovered her lies, had documented each one, and had continued to live with her, gathering evidence. The courage that must have taken, the pain he must have felt, made my chest ache. The total at the bottom of the spreadsheet made me close my eyes. $427,315. Gone. Drained from James's accounts over 3 years of systematic theft. But that was just the first folder. The second folder was labeled Private Investigator Report, Brooks Vanessa Marie. I opened it and found a 53-page PDF document from a firm called Meridian Investigations, dated 3 months ago. The cover letter was addressed to James. Mr. Washington, per your request, we have completed a comprehensive background investigation of Vanessa Marie Brooks. What we discovered goes significantly beyond the scope of your initial inquiry. Please call us immediately upon reviewing this report. The first page showed a photograph of Vanessa, but not the Vanessa I knew. This woman had blonde hair, wore different makeup, dressed in a more conservative style. But the bone structure was unmistakable. The eyes were the same. Subject: Vanessa Marie Brooks, also known as Victoria Marie Brennan, also known as Valerie Bradford. Known aliases: 3 confirmed identities. Date of birth: March 8, 1992. Age 33, not 32 as claimed. Background: Subject comes from a wealthy Connecticut family that lost everything in a 2008 financial scandal involving her father, Richard Bradford, who is currently serving 15 years in federal prison for securities fraud. Criminal history: no convictions. 2 arrests for fraud-related charges in her early 20s, both dismissed due to lack of evidence or witnesses recanting statements. Marital history: Marriage number 1, Victoria Brennan to Robert Chen, tech entrepreneur, age 58. Married June 2015, divorced March 2016. Settlement: $1.2 million. Mr. Chen died of apparent heart failure 7 months after the divorce. Investigation closed. Natural causes determined. Marriage number 2, Valerie Bradford to Thomas Whitmore, real estate developer, age 62. Married August 2017, divorced January 2019. Settlement, $800,000. Mr. Whitmore relocated to Costa Rica following bankruptcy proceedings initiated by Miss Bradford's legal team. Marriage number 3. Vanessa Brooks to James Marcus Washington, architect, age 32 at time of marriage. Married June 2022, currently active. Pattern analysis. Subject appears to target successful men, often older or in vulnerable positions, recently divorced, health issues, family deaths. Courtship period typically 4 to 8 months. Marriage follows quickly. Financial extraction begins immediately. Exit strategy appears to be either divorce with substantial settlement or subject's spouse becoming deceased. The report went on for pages. Financial records showing Vanessa, or whatever her real name was, had accumulated nearly $3 million across her 2 previous marriages. Copies of social media posts under her different identities, each carefully curated to appeal to different types of men. Screenshots of conversations with someone named Alicia Moreno discussing targets and extraction timelines. And then the section that made my blood run cold, medical timeline concerns. During our surveillance of the subject, we noted several instances of concerning behavior related to Mr. Washington's health. October 12th. Subject observed at CVS Pharmacy filling Mr. Washington's prescription for pantoprazole, stomach acid medication. Surveillance video shows subject purchasing identical-looking capsules from Vitamin Isle. Nature of substitution unknown. November 3. Mr. Washington mentioned severe abdominal pain to subject, requested she schedule doctor's appointment. Subject agreed but was observed deleting appointment confirmation email before Mr. Washington could see it. November 28th. Subject overhead on phone call stating, "The longer this takes, the more complicated it gets. I need him either divorced or dead within 6 months." December 15th. Mr. Washington collapsed at home. Subject waited 45 minutes before calling 911, claiming she thought he was just sleeping. Investigators note, we strongly recommend Mr. Washington seek immediate medical attention from a physician the subject has not had contact with, and consider the possibility that his health issues may not be entirely natural in origin. The report was dated January 20th. James had received this information and had immediately gone to a different doctor, behind Vanessa's back. That's when they'd found the cancer, stage 4, already metastasized. But was it just cancer? Or had Vanessa's tampering with his medication, her delays in getting him treatment, turned a treatable condition into a death sentence? I would never know for certain. But the possibility sat in my chest like a stone. The third folder was labeled Audio Evidence. I clicked on the first file, dated 5 weeks ago. James's voice came through the laptop speakers, weak but clear. "Vanessa, I found the Cartier receipt. You told me that money was for your mother's surgery." Vanessa's response was cold, annoyed. "Your mother's been dead for 3 years, James. Stop being paranoid." "I meant my mother. You said she needed emergency surgery in California." A long pause, then, "Oh, that. Well, I handled it, didn't I? She's fine." "There was no surgery. I called the hospital you claimed she was at. They have no record of any patient with that name." "Jesus, James, you're checking up on me now? This is what I'm talking about. You're so controlling. The stress isn't good for you." "Controlling? I'm trying to understand why you lied about $18,000. Our money, James. In a marriage, it's our money. I don't need your permission for every purchase. But you do need my permission to lie about what it's being used for. Are we really going to do this? Fine. I bought some jewelry. I wanted to look nice for you. Is that a crime? $18,000 worth of jewelry that I've never seen you wear? It's in the safe deposit box for special occasions. God, James, you sound like your mother right now. Always questioning, never trusting. This is exhausting." The recording continued, with Vanessa systematically deflecting, gaslighting, turning each of James's reasonable questions into evidence of his paranoia or his resemblance to his controlling mother. By the end of the conversation, she'd almost convinced him that he was the problem. Almost. But James had kept recording. The next audio file was dated 3 weeks ago, right around the time he'd received the cancer diagnosis. James's voice, even weaker now. "I need to tell you something. I saw Dr. Morrison yesterday. Not Dr. Chen. A different doctor." "What? Why would you do that? Dr. Chen is our family physician." "That's exactly why. I wanted a second opinion that you hadn't arranged. Jesus, James, you really have lost it. What did this quack doctor tell you? I have cancer, Vanessa. Stage 4 gastric cancer. It's in my stomach, my liver, my lymph nodes. A long pause. Then, how long? What? How long do they give you? That's what you want to know? Not what are the treatment options or how are you feeling, but how long until I die? Don't be dramatic. I'm asking practical questions. How long? 6 to 8 months with treatment. Maybe 12 if I respond well. Or as little as 8 weeks if... And your life insurance is paid up? The policy with Northwestern Mutual? The sound of something slamming. James's hand on a table, perhaps. Are you fucking kidding me right now? I just told you I'm dying and you're asking about life insurance? Somebody has to think practically, James. You've never been good with money. If you're going to die, I need to know what I'm working with. What you're working with. This is my life, Vanessa. And it's my future. I've put 3 years into this marriage. I've taken care of you, supported your career, played the perfect wife. I'm entitled to something for that. Taking care of me? You've stolen $400,000 from me. You've lied about everything. You delayed my diagnosis. Jesus, Vanessa, did you know I was sick? Did you keep me from getting treatment? You're being hysterical. The cancer is probably affecting your thinking. I think you need to rest. Answer the question. Did you know I was sick months ago? I'm not going to be interrogated like a criminal in my own home. If you're going to be like this, maybe I should stay somewhere else for a while. Give you space to deal with your diagnosis. Stay somewhere else? I'm dying and you want to leave? You're being impossible. I'll be at the Ritz in Miami if you decide to be reasonable. Don't call me unless you're ready to apologize. The sound of heels clicking away, a door slamming. Then James's voice, barely a whisper. God, Mom was right. She was right about everything. The recording ended. I sat in the darkness, tears streaming down my face for the first time since leaving the hospital. My son had known. In his final weeks, he'd known exactly what Vanessa was, and he'd been alone with that knowledge, gathering evidence even as his body failed him. The fourth folder was labeled Legal Documents, Urgent. Inside, I found several PDFs. First, a power of attorney document signed by James and notarized 18 months ago, long before he'd met Vanessa. It granted me full legal authority over his affairs in the event he became incapacitated. I'd forgotten about this. We'd signed mutual POAs before my last deployment, just a precaution we'd both agreed on. But James had never revoked it, even after getting married. Second, a revised last will and testament, dated 2 weeks before his hospitalization. I opened it with shaking hands. The will was crystal clear. Vanessa Marie Brooks Washington was to receive the minimum required by Florida law as a spouse, roughly 30% of the marital assets. The remaining 70% was divided as follows. 50% to a newly established educational trust, the James Marcus Washington Scholarship Fund for Architectural Studies, to provide full scholarships to underprivileged students pursuing architecture. I was named as the trustee. 20% to me, Diana Washington, described as my mother, my hero, my foundation. The final portion was designated for the Foster Architecture Mentorship Program in Naples, a nonprofit James had apparently been volunteering with for 2 years. The will had been properly executed, witnessed by 2 people I didn't know, David Thompson and Christina Patterson, and notarized by a lawyer named Edward Martinez. The final document in the folder was a letter addressed to Edward Martinez, marked to be delivered upon my death. Mr. Martinez, if you're reading this, please contact my mother, Colonel Diana Washington, immediately. Phone number enclosed. Give her the USB drive I left with you. Copy of evidence on this drive. Tell her everything. She'll know what to do. And please, help her fight. Vanessa can't be allowed to win this. James M. Washington. So there was another copy of this evidence, safely stored with a lawyer. James had thought of everything. The last folder was labeled simply, For Mom, Final Thoughts. I almost couldn't bring myself to open it, but I owed it to James to read whatever he'd left for me. It was a video file, dated 3 weeks ago. I clicked play. James's face filled the screen, gaunt and pale, sitting in this very office. Behind him, I could see the window with its view of the backyard. It was dark outside in the video. He must have recorded this at night, when Vanessa was out or asleep. Hi, Mom, he began, his voice raspy but determined. If you're watching this, I'm already gone. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the cancer earlier. You were finishing your final tour, your last mission, and I didn't want you to cut it short. You've sacrificed enough for me already." He paused, taking a sip of water, wincing with the effort. "I need you to know some things. First, I was never angry about the deployments, the missed birthdays, any of it. I was proud, Mom. So proud to be your son. You taught me what mattered: integrity, service, helping others. Not through words, but through example. Every care package, every letter, every time you said, 'I'm proud of you,' I felt loved." Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't wipe them away. Second, I know about Vanessa. I've known for months. The private investigator I hired confirmed what I suspected. She married me for money, and when I got sick, she saw it as an opportunity to speed things up. I have evidence, you've seen it by now, that she may have tampered with my medication, delayed my diagnosis. I'll never know for sure if she caused the cancer or just made it worse. But I know she didn't help. He looked directly at the camera, his hazel eyes, Michael's eyes, intense despite his weakness. "Here's the thing, Mom. Part of me wanted to tell you immediately when I found out, but another part of me realized something. If I documented everything and left it for you to find, I'd be giving you a mission, something to fight for. You're a warrior, Mom. You've always needed a mission. I didn't want you drifting in retirement with nothing but grief. So I gave you a war to win." A sad smile crossed his face. "I'm sorry for that burden, but I know you'll win. You always do." Third thing, the architecture program, the scholarship fund, that's my real legacy. Not the buildings I designed, but the futures I helped shape. Keep that going. Help more kids dream. Finally, and this is the most important part, don't spend your retirement alone. You've given so much to everyone else, the country, the army, me. Now give something to yourself. Find joy, find purpose, maybe mentor someone, maybe even foster a kid who needs what you can give. But Mom, live, don't just exist. He leaned closer to the camera. Your mission now is to build something beautiful from all this pain. I know you will. I love you, Mom. I forgive you for anything you think you need forgiveness for, which is nothing, by the way. And I'll always, always be proud to be your son. Oh, and one more thing. He smiled, a flash of his old humor. Kick Vanessa's ass for me, will you? Legally, of course. I know you'll do it right. I love you. Always. Your son, James. The video ended, freezing on his face. That smile, weak but genuine. I sat in the silence of his office, my father's watch in one hand, my heart breaking and hardening at the same time. James had given me everything I needed. Evidence, legal documents, professional contacts, even a mission statement. My brilliant, thoughtful son had turned his death into a weapon against the woman who'd killed him. Now it was my turn to use it. I checked the time, 3:47 in the morning. Too early to call anyone, but not too early to plan. I opened a new document on James's laptop and began typing, falling back on 40 years of military operational planning. Operation Justice. Objectives. 1. Secure all financial assets. Freeze accounts. Prevent further theft. 2. Establish legal authority. Leverage POA. Contact lawyer Edward Martinez 3. Gather additional evidence. Search house thoroughly. Check safe deposit boxes 4. Build criminal case. Contact police. Provide evidence of fraud/potential manslaughter 5. Protect James's legacy. Ensure will is executed. Establish scholarship fund 6. Remove Vanessa from all positions of benefit. Life insurance, property, inheritance. Timeline. Day 1. Today. Contact Robert Hayes. Financial. Edward Martinez. Legal. Day 2. Execute account freezes. Secure house. Inventory assets. Day 3. Police consultation. Arrange funeral. Day 4 to 7. Evidence compilation. Witness statements. Week 2. Legal filings. Confrontation. Week 3 to 4. Resolution. Justice. Resources needed. Robert Hayes. Financial expertise. Military connections. Edward Martinez. Legal representation. Will execution. Detective/police. Criminal investigation. Witnesses. Margaret Patterson. David Thompson. Medical professionals I worked through the night. Printing documents. Organizing evidence. Creating a battle plan that would have made any commanding officer proud. By the time the sun began to rise, painting James's office in shades of gold and pink, I had a complete operational strategy. At 0600 hours, old habits die hard, I made my first call. Robert Hayes. Robert, it's Diana Washington. Diana? Good God, it's 6 in the morning. What's wrong? Everything, I said quietly. My son died yesterday. Cancer. And his wife has been systematically robbing him blind for 3 years. I need your help, and I need it today. There was a pause, then Robert's voice came back, all business. I'm listening. What do you need? I need to freeze every account James had access to. I have power of attorney, executed before his marriage. I have evidence of fraud, theft, and possibly worse. And Robert? I looked at the receipts spread across James's desk. She stole over $400,000 while he was dying in the ICU. Jesus Christ. Another pause. I'll be at the office by 0800. Bring everything you have. We'll handle this. Thank you, Diana, he said, his voice softer now. I'm sorry about James. He was a good kid. Yes, I said, my throat tight. He was, and that's why we're going to make sure she doesn't get away with this. I hung up and made my second call. Martinez Law Offices, this is the answering service. This is Colonel Diana Washington. I need to speak with Edward Martinez urgently regarding the estate of James Marcus Washington. My son left instructions for Mr. Martinez to contact me upon his death. James died yesterday. I'll have Mr. Martinez call you as soon as the office opens at 9, ma'am. I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you. I had 4 hours until my meeting with Robert. I used them to search the house systematically, room by room, documenting everything with my phone camera. In the master bedroom closet, hidden behind Vanessa's remaining designer shoes, I found a fireproof lockbox. The combination was James's birthday. Of course it was. Inside, both their passports. The deed to the house, showing James as sole owner, purchased before the marriage. Life insurance policies, 2 of them, as James's notes had indicated. Social security cards, and a handwritten notebook labeled Financial Log. I opened the notebook and found James's meticulous entries, tracking every dollar Vanessa had taken. June 28, 2022, $12,000 for furniture. Actually Gucci shopping spree, Miami, July 15, 2022, $18,500. Wardrobe for work. Actually plastic surgery consultation plus Botox, August 3, 2022, $23,000. Mother's medical bills. Mother already deceased. Actually jewelry. Page after page. Lie after lie. Theft after theft. James had known for over a year. Had documented everything. Had been building his case even as his body betrayed him. At the back of the notebook, a final entry dated 3 weeks ago. Confronted V about diagnosis. She asked about life insurance payout. No sympathy, no support, just calculations. I was right about everything. Mom will find this. Mom will fight. I'm not strong enough anymore, but she is. She always was. I love you, Mom. Finish this for me. J. I closed the notebook and held it to my chest, standing in my son's bedroom as morning light filtered through the windows. I will, baby, I whispered to the empty room. I promise you, I will. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Edward Martinez. I just received notification from the hospital about James Washington's passing. I have a package he left for you. Can you come to my office at 2 p.m. today? I'm so very sorry for your loss. M. I texted back. I'll be there. And thank you. Diana Washington. Everything was falling into place. By tonight, I would have legal representation, financial accounts frozen, and a clear path forward. But there was one more call to make. I pulled up Vanessa's number and typed out a text message. We need to talk about James's arrangements and estate matters. I'll be at the house all day if you want to stop by. Diana. I hit send and waited. The response came within 2 minutes. Finally being reasonable. I'll come by this afternoon around 3. We can work something out that's fair to both of us. V. I smiled grimly at the phone. Vanessa thought I was weakening, ready to negotiate, willing to give her what she wanted to avoid conflict. She had no idea what was coming. The warrior in me was fully awake now, and this warrior had receipts, recordings, legal documents, and 40 years of strategic training. Vanessa Brooks, or whatever her real name was, had picked the wrong family to prey on. By 3 o'clock this afternoon, her world was going to start crumbling, and I was going to make sure I was there to watch every moment of it. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, I sat in Edward Martinez's office in downtown Naples, a converted Victorian home with high ceilings and dark wood paneling that spoke of old money and established trust. Martinez himself was younger than I'd expected, early 40s, sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who'd served. I noticed the small USMC pin on his lapel before he even introduced himself. "Colonel Washington," he said, standing to shake my hand with a firm grip. "I'm Edward Martinez, former JAG, now in private practice. I'm deeply sorry about James. He was a good man." "You knew him?" "For about 6 months. He came to me in January after discovering some concerning information about his wife. We worked together to create the revised will and organize his evidence." Martinez gestured to a banker's box on the credenza behind his desk. "He left this for you. Said you'd know what to do with it." I looked at the box, then back at Martinez. He was preparing for his own death. "Yes, ma'am. He knew the cancer diagnosis was coming. He'd been having symptoms for months that his wife kept dismissing as stress or food poisoning. When he finally saw a doctor without her knowledge, it was already stage 4. Martinez paused. "Colonel, I've been practicing law for 15 years. I've never seen someone face their own mortality with such calm determination to protect others. Your son spent his final weeks building a case against the woman who was killing him." "Killing him?" I kept my voice steady. "You think she caused the cancer?" "No, but I think she delayed the diagnosis long enough that a treatable condition became terminal. And I think she may have tampered with his medication to hasten the decline." He opened a folder on his desk. The investigator found evidence that she was replacing his prescriptions with placebos or lower doses. We were planning to involve law enforcement, but James deteriorated faster than we anticipated. "Then we involve them now," I said. "I have his power of attorney. I have all his evidence. And I have no intention of letting her get away with this." Martinez smiled, the kind of smile a shark might give. "I was hoping you'd say that. Let me tell you what we're up against, and then we'll plan our strategy." For the next hour, Martinez walked me through Florida estate law, marital property rights, and the criminal implications of financial exploitation. The picture he painted was both encouraging and infuriating. The good news? James's revised will was ironclad. Properly witnessed, notarized, and executed while he was demonstrably of sound mind. Vanessa could contest it, but she'd lose. The better news, my power of attorney, granted before the marriage, gave me legal standing to freeze assets immediately and investigate potential fraud. The bad news, proving criminal conduct beyond a reasonable doubt would be difficult. Circumstantial evidence, even mountains of it, wasn't the same as proof. "But," Martinez said, leaning back in his chair, "civil court has a lower burden of proof. We can sue her for fraud, undue influence, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. We can tie up every asset in litigation. We can make her life extremely difficult while building the criminal case." "How long?" I asked. "For the civil suit? We can file emergency motions within 48 hours. For criminal charges," he paused, "that depends on whether we can get law enforcement interested. Do you have contacts?" I thought of Robert Hayes and his network of military and government connections. "I can make calls." "Good, because here's what I recommend. We go on offense immediately. File for emergency control of the estate, freeze all accounts, secure all property. Then we sit back and wait for her to react. People like Vanessa always overreact when their money gets cut off. They make mistakes. And when she makes mistakes, we document everything, and we hand it to the police on a silver platter." I stood to leave, then paused. James mentioned a scholarship fund, the James Marcus Washington Scholarship for Architectural Studies. "Already established," Martinez said, pulling out another folder. He set it up 2 months ago with an initial funding of $50,000 from a separate account Vanessa didn't know about. The trust is structured to receive the bulk of his estate upon probate. We're talking about potentially $2 million for underprivileged students to study architecture. My throat tightened. $2 million? Your son was better with money than anyone realized. He had investments, a healthy 401k, life insurance, and this house is worth about $600,000. Even after Vanessa's theft, even after the medical bills, there's substantial assets. Martinez smiled gently. He wanted to make sure his death meant something, Colonel. He wanted to help kids who reminded him of himself, kids with talent but no resources. I thought of the teenager I'd been growing up in Southside Chicago, joining the Army because college seemed impossible. James had known that story. He'd built his legacy for kids just like I'd been. Then let's make sure that happens, I said. I arrived back at James's house at 2:45, 15 minutes before Vanessa was due to arrive. Robert Hayes had called during my drive to confirm that account freezes would be in place by end of business today. Edward Martinez was preparing emergency filings for the court. Everything was moving with military precision. Now came the hard part. Facing the woman who'd killed my son. I'd changed clothes since this morning, putting on my dress uniform. The dark blue jacket with its silver eagles on the shoulders, the rows of ribbons on my chest representing 4 decades of service, the spit-shined shoes that clicked with authority on hardwood floors. I wanted Vanessa to see exactly who she was dealing with. At 2:58, a white BMW pulled into the driveway. Vanessa emerged wearing black, a designer dress that probably cost $3,000, pearls at her throat, oversized sunglasses hiding her eyes. The grieving widow costume. I opened the door before she could knock. Her smile was practiced, sympathetic. "Diana, I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. I know we got off on the wrong foot yesterday, but we're family now. We should work together." "Come in," I said, stepping back. She walked past me into the living room, her heels clicking on the floor James had installed himself. She looked around with an appraising eye, no doubt calculating the value of every piece of furniture, every artwork on the walls. "I've been thinking about the arrangements," she said, settling onto the couch with fluid grace. "James would want something simple, I think. Maybe cremation? And as for the estate, I'm sure we can come to an agreement that honors his memory while being fair to both of us." "Fair," I repeated, remaining standing. "Tell me, Vanessa, what would you consider fair?" "Well, obviously as his wife, I inherit the house and his accounts. That's Florida law. But I'm willing to give you some of his personal items. Photos, his father's things, sentimental value items, and perhaps a small cash settlement, say $50,000, to help you get settled in your retirement." $50,000. The same amount she'd offered in her text, as if she were doing me a favor. "That's generous," I said, my voice flat. "And what about the $427,000 you stole from him over the past 3 years? Her smile froze. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" I walked to James's desk and picked up the folder I'd prepared. $75,000 for a yacht rental while James was in the ICU, $49,000 for Cartier jewelry, $23,000 for plastic surgery you told him was for your dead mother's emergency surgery. James gave me that money willingly. It was our money. "Really?" I opened the folder and pulled out the first receipt, reading aloud. "June 28th, 2022, withdrawal of $12,000. James's notation. For furniture per Vanessa. Your actual purchase, Gucci handbags and shoes, Miami Design District." I pulled out another. July 15th, $18,500. James's note. Wardrobe for work. Actual expense, Premier Aesthetics Miami, breast augmentation consultation and Botox treatments. "I don't have to listen to this." Vanessa stood. "You're going through our private financial records? That's illegal. I'm the executor of James's estate with full power of attorney, granted 18 months before he married you. It's completely legal." I pulled out another document. And speaking of legal documents, let me read you something from James's revised will, executed 2 weeks before his hospitalization. Her face paled. "What revised will? I, James Marcus Washington, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous wills and declare this to be my last will and testament." I looked up at her. "To my wife, Vanessa Brooks Washington, I leave the minimum required by Florida law as a spouse, approximately 30% of marital assets acquired during our marriage." "That's impossible. James wouldn't—" "The remainder of my estate," I continued reading, "including all premarital assets, investments, and life insurance policies naming my mother as beneficiary, shall be distributed as follows. 50% to the James Marcus Washington Scholarship Fund." "Stop." Vanessa's voice was sharp now, the sympathetic mask completely gone. "You can't do this. I'm his wife. I have rights." "You have the right to 30% of marital assets," I said calmly, "which after we deduct the $400,000 you stole, leaves you with approximately $68,000. Congratulations." She stepped toward me, her face twisted with rage. You think you can just swoop in here and take everything? I put 3 years into this marriage. I earned this money. Earned it? I felt my own control slip slightly. You stole it while he was dying. You delayed his cancer diagnosis. You replaced his medication with placebos. You killed him, Vanessa. Prove it, she hissed. You can't prove any of that. It's all circumstantial bullshit from a grieving mother who wants someone to blame. I pulled out my phone and pressed play on one of James's audio recordings. His weak voice filled the room. I have cancer, Vanessa. Stage 4 gastric cancer. And her response? How long do they give you? And your life insurance is paid up. The color drained from Vanessa's face as she listened to herself ask about life insurance before asking about treatment options. That's taken out of context, she whispered. I played another clip, her voice on the phone with someone named Alicia. The longer this takes, the more complicated it gets. I need him either divorced or dead within 6 months. Still think I can't prove anything? I asked quietly. Vanessa stared at the phone, then at me, calculation racing behind her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Softer, vulnerable, a new tactic. Diana, please. You don't understand. I did care about James at first, but he was so controlling, so suspicious. He wouldn't let me have any freedom. I felt trapped. I made mistakes, yes, but I was trying to survive. By stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars and letting him die without proper medical care? I didn't know about the cancer until it was too late. He hid it from me. He hid it because when he told you, you asked about life insurance. I stepped closer to her. You want to know what I understand, Vanessa? I understand that you're a predator. I understand that James wasn't your first victim. Victoria Brennan married Robert Chen. Valerie Bradford married Thomas Whitmore. 2 previous husbands, both older, both wealthy, both conveniently out of the picture. Her eyes widened. You can't. That investigator had no right. The investigator James hired had every right. I pulled out the PI report. Should I read this part? About how Robert Chen died of a heart attack 7 months after your divorce? Or how Thomas Whitmore fled to Costa Rica after you bankrupted him? Those are lies, coincidences. 3 coincidences, 3 wealthy men, 3 quick marriages, 3 profitable exits. I shook my head. The police are going to be very interested in this pattern. The police? For the first time, genuine fear crossed her face. You can't go to the police. There's no proof of any crime. There's proof of fraud, proof of financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, proof of medical neglect. I held up the USB drive. James documented everything, every lie, every theft, every time you delayed his medical care. And he left it all for me because he knew I'd finish what he started. Vanessa's mask shattered completely. The beautiful, sympathetic widow disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. Fine, she spat. You want a war? I'll give you one. I'll contest the will. I'll drag James's name through the mud. I'll tell everyone he was mentally ill, that you manipulated him, that you're a controlling military bitch who couldn't stand to see him happy. Go ahead, I said calmly. While you're doing that, I'll be sharing these recordings with the police and with the media. I'm sure the local news would love to hear about the black widow who married dying men for their money. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I pulled out one more document. This is a notice from your bank. As of 4 p.m. today, all of James's accounts have been frozen by court order. All credit cards in his name have been canceled. You have no access to any funds, any property, or any assets pending the resolution of the estate. You can't do that. She lunged for the paper, but I stepped back. I already did. You have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings from this house. Anything of significant value will be inventoried and photographed. After that, you'll be considered a trespasser. This is my home. This house was purchased by James 3 years before he met you. It's in his name only. It was never yours. I walked to the door and opened it. 72 hours, Vanessa, and I'd suggest you get a very good lawyer. She stood there, trembling with rage, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. I know people, she said, her voice low and dangerous. People who can make your life very difficult. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I'm a colonel in the United States Army, I said quietly. I've faced enemy combatants in 3 war zones. I've been shot at, bombed, and threatened by people far more dangerous than you. You're just a con artist who got caught. Now get out of my son's house. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, then paused. "You'll regret this, Diana. I promise you that." "The only regret I have," I said, "is that I didn't come home sooner. I might have saved James from you." She left without another word, her BMW peeling out of the driveway with a screech of tires. I closed the door and leaned against it, my hands shaking for the first time. The confrontation was over. The first battle was won. But I knew this war was far from finished. 6 months later, the morning sun painted the Naples sky in shades of pink and gold as I sat on the back patio of James's house, my house now, with a cup of coffee and the newspaper. The Gulf breeze carried the scent of salt and jasmine from Margaret's garden across the street. It was a Tuesday in August, and I'd developed a routine I never thought possible during my military years. Wake at 6, coffee on the patio, read the news, then off to my new job as executive director of the James Marcus Washington Scholarship Fund. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and slow, painful healing. Vanessa had tried to fight. She'd hired an expensive lawyer, though we never figured out where she got the money, probably from her mysterious connections. She'd contested the will, filed motions, made accusations. For 3 months, it had been a daily battle of court filings and legal maneuvering. Then Detective Samuel Morrison of the Naples Police Department had gotten involved. Morrison, a black man in his late 40s with sharp eyes and a personal vendetta against elder fraud, had taken one look at James's evidence and launched a full investigation. Within weeks, he'd connected Vanessa to a larger network. The connections she'd threatened me with turned out to be a sophisticated fraud ring operating across Florida, targeting vulnerable men with wealth. Vanessa wasn't just a gold digger. She was part of an organized criminal enterprise. The FBI had taken over the case in May. Last I'd heard, Vanessa was facing federal charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and in James's case, criminally negligent homicide. The trial was set for October, and Morrison assured me the evidence was overwhelming. "She'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison, minimum," he told me last week. "And we've identified 7 other victims. Your son's documentation helped us crack the whole operation. James had saved others, even in death." The scholarship fund had launched in June with a ceremony at the Naples Community Center. Over 200 people had attended. James's colleagues, clients, students from the architecture mentorship program he'd volunteered with. David Thompson, who ran the program, had given a speech about James's dedication to helping underprivileged kids discover their potential. He believed every young person deserved a chance to dream, David had said, his voice thick with emotion. And now, because of him, 12 students a year will get full scholarships to study architecture. That's his real legacy. 12 scholarships, $2 million in the trust fund, growing annually. James had made sure of it. I'd also discovered the mentorship program James had loved so much, and I'd started volunteering there 3 days a week, helping teenagers sketch buildings, review portfolios, understand the math behind structural design. It connected me to James in a way that felt healing rather than painful. But the biggest surprise had come 3 months ago, when I'd started volunteering at Naples Children's Hospital. I'd gone initially to make a donation in James's name to the pediatric oncology ward, a way to honor his battle with cancer. While there, I'd met Dr. Sarah Bennett, who'd mentioned they needed volunteers to read to the children whose parents couldn't be there during the day. "A lot of our kids are in the foster system or have parents who work multiple jobs," she'd explained. "They spend hours alone. A friendly face, someone to read them stories, it makes a real difference." I'd signed up thinking it would be a few hours a month. Then I'd met Tyler Reynolds. He was 8 years old, biracial, black father, white mother, with warm brown skin and eyes that sparkled with intelligence despite his illness. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, diagnosed 18 months ago. His mother had died in a car accident when he was 6. His father was serving time in state prison for drug-related charges. Tyler had been in foster care, but his medical needs made placement difficult. He'd spent more time in the hospital than in any home. The first time I'd read to him, a book about astronauts, his obsession, he'd looked up at me with those bright eyes and said, "Did you know that Colonel Eileen Collins was the first woman to command a space shuttle? She was in the Air Force, like you were in the Army. That's so cool." Something in my chest had cracked open. Over the following weeks, I'd visited Tyler 3 times a week. We'd read books about space exploration, talked about his dreams of becoming an astronaut, played chess when he felt strong enough. He'd told me about his mother, how she used to sing to him at bedtime, about his father, who sent letters from prison that Tyler kept in a special box. "I know he made mistakes," Tyler had said one day, his small hand holding a chess piece. "But he's still my dad. I think he'd be proud that I'm fighting so hard to get better." The courage in this child, the resilience, the absolute refusal to let cancer define him, it reminded me so much of James. Last month, Dr. Bennett had pulled me aside after one of my visits. "Tyler's going into a critical phase of treatment, bone marrow transplant. He'll need intensive support, stability, a home environment with someone who can handle medical complexity." She'd paused. "Diana, I know this is forward of me, but have you ever considered fostering?" The question had stunned me. Foster? At 62? As a single woman who'd spent 40 years in the military with no experience parenting a child this young. But then I'd thought about James's final video message. Maybe foster a kid who needs what you can give. Find joy. Find purpose. But Mom, live. That night, I'd gone home and started researching foster care requirements in Florida. The process had taken 3 months. Background checks, home studies, medical foster care training, psychological evaluations. My military record had helped expedite some aspects, though it had raised questions about stability given my history of frequent moves. "Colonel Washington," the social worker had said, "you've moved 23 times in 40 years. How do we know you won't relocate again?" I'd looked her in the eye and said, "Because I'm done serving my country. Now I want to serve one child who needs me. I'm not going anywhere." The approval had come through last week. Tomorrow, Tyler would come home. I'd converted James's guest room into a space for an 8-year-old boy who dreamed of stars. Navy blue walls covered with glow-in-the-dark constellations. A bookshelf filled with books about space, science, and adventure. James's childhood telescope by the window. A desk for homework and drawing. A comfortable bed with a NASA-themed comforter that Margaret had sewn by hand. "For the little astronaut," she'd said, tears in her eyes when she'd delivered it yesterday. James would love this. Yes, I thought, he would. My phone buzzed with a text from David Thompson. "Heading to the center. See you at 10? Got a surprise for you." I smiled and texted back. "I'll be there." The James Marcus Washington Center for Architectural Education had opened last month in a renovated building downtown. The space was everything James had designed in his preliminary sketches. Open, light-filled, inspiring. The main gallery featured rotating exhibitions of student work. The workshop had state-of-the-art equipment. The computer lab had professional-grade architecture software. Above the entrance, a bronze plaque read, "The James Marcus Washington Center for Architectural Education, Building Dreams, Honoring Service, dedicated to James Marcus Washington, 1989 to 2025. Architect, mentor, beloved son, who believed in the potential of every young person." I finished my coffee and went inside to get ready. The newspaper had a small article on page 3. Vanessa Brooks' plea deal rejected. Trial set for October. Good. Let her face a jury. Let 12 people hear what she'd done to James and the others. At the center, David was waiting for me with a nervous smile and a folder under his arm. "What's this surprise?" I asked. "Come see." He led me to the main gallery, where 15 teenagers stood in a line, wearing matching t-shirts that read JMWC, First Annual Class. Behind them was a wall I hadn't seen completed, a massive mural of James, painted from a photo I'd provided. He was mid-laugh, sitting at a drafting table with students gathered around him, showing them something on a blueprint. "The students painted it," David said, "all of them working together. Took them 6 weeks. They wanted to honor him properly." I couldn't speak. The likeness was perfect. James's joy, his patience, his absolute love of teaching captured in bright colors on the wall. A girl stepped forward. Maya, I recognized her from the funeral. She was 17 now, one of the scholarship recipients. "Colonel Washington," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "Mr. James changed my life. I was this close to dropping out of school." She held her fingers an inch apart. "Working full-time to help my mom pay rent, sleeping through classes. He found me through the mentorship program, worked with me after hours, helped me apply for scholarships. When he got sick, he made Mr. David promised to make sure I stayed in school. She pulled out a paper. I got accepted to the University of Florida's architecture program, full ride, because of him. Tears streamed down my face as other students came forward one by one, each sharing their story about how James had believed in them, helped them, changed their trajectories. Isaiah, who'd spoken at the funeral, was now enrolled in community college with plans to transfer to a 4-year program. Kelly had won a statewide design competition. Her sustainable housing project featured in the Naples Daily News. 17-year-old Marcus had been homeless when James found him. Now he had stable housing and was working part-time at an architecture firm while finishing high school. He saw us, Marcus said simply. Not where we came from, not our problems. He saw who we could become. When the last student finished speaking, David handed me the folder. Applications, he explained. For next year's scholarship class, we've received 147 applications from across Florida, students who heard about James's story, who want to honor him by pursuing their dreams. 147 young people inspired by my son's legacy. He did this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Even in death, he's still helping people. No, David corrected gently. You're both doing this. He created the foundation. You're building the structure. Together, you're changing lives. That afternoon, I drove to Naples General Hospital to finalize paperwork for Tyler's discharge tomorrow. Dr. Bennett met me in her office with a smile. He's so excited he barely slept last night. Kept telling the nurses he's going to live with Miss Diana, who was a real colonel. How's his health? I asked, the practical concerns surfacing. Stable. The transplant went well. He'll need monitoring, medications, frequent checkups. But Diana, his prognosis is good. Really good. We're looking at full remission within the year. Relief flooded through me. And the emotional adjustment? Moving in with me? I think it'll be healing for you both, Dr. Bennett said carefully. He lost his mother. You lost your son. Neither of you can replace those losses, but you can help each other move forward. Tyler needs a home. You need purpose. It's a good match. I nodded, thinking of James's words. Build something beautiful from all this pain. There's one more thing, Dr. Bennett said, sliding a paper across her desk. Tyler asked if he could give this to you himself tomorrow, but I thought you should see it first. It was a drawing in crayon, a house with a big yard, stick figures labeled me and Miss Diana, and above it all, a starry sky with the words, Home at Last, written in careful 8-year-old handwriting. In the corner, a smaller figure with wings, labeled my mom and Mr. James watching from heaven. I pressed my hand to my mouth, unable to stop the tears. He understands more than we give him credit for, Dr. Bennett said softly. He knows you lost someone too. He wants you both to be happy again. That evening, I returned to James's house. My house, I was learning to say, and found Margaret on my porch with a casserole. Thought you might be too busy to cook with Tyler coming tomorrow, she said. It's my grandmother's recipe. Kids love it. Thank you, Margaret, for everything. The quilt, the casserole, the friendship. She patted my arm. James was like family to us. Tyler will be too. The whole neighborhood is excited. Mrs. Chen next door already bought him a welcome home balloon. Mr. Peterson down the street is setting up a telescope for stargazing. We take care of our own here. After she left, I walked through the house, seeing it with new eyes. James's photos still on the walls, but now joined by Tyler's drawings from the hospital. The office still had James's drafting table, but I'd added a smaller desk for Tyler to do homework. The backyard still had the swing set James had installed years ago, now repainted and ready for a child who needed it. 2 lives intertwined. Past and future, grief and hope, loss and new beginnings. I went to James's room. I'd left it largely untouched, and sat on his bed. I miss you, I said to the silence. Every single day I miss you. But I'm doing what you asked. I'm living, not just existing. Tomorrow I'm bringing home a little boy who reminds me of you. Brave, smart, full of dreams. I think you'd like him. I think you'd want this. The room offered no answers, but I felt a peace settle over me that I hadn't felt in 6 months. James was gone, but his love, his legacy, his mission for me, those remained. 8 months later, I stood on the beach at sunset with Tyler, now 9 years old and in full remission. His hair had grown back, thick and curly. His eyes sparkled with the energy of a healthy child. He wore his favorite NASA t-shirt and the blue sneakers that had become his signature. We carried a small wooden frame containing James's photograph, a candid shot of him laughing at the mentorship program, truly happy. This had become our ritual on difficult anniversaries. Today marked 1 year since James's death. Tyler and I had talked about grief, about loss, about how to honor people we loved who were gone. He understood in the way children do, with a clarity adults often lost. We found our spot where the tide reached far enough to kiss the sand but not take what was placed there. I set the frame down gently, pressing the base into the soft earth. Tyler placed a smooth stone beside it, one he'd found in our garden that morning. "So it doesn't blow away," he explained, as he always did. We stood there for a long while, letting the waves speak for us. "Miss Diana," Tyler said finally. We'd had the conversation about him calling me Mom 3 months ago. He'd asked permission, tears in his eyes, saying his birth mother would understand. I'd said yes, crying just as hard. But sometimes, in quiet moments like this, he still used my name. "Yes, baby? Do you think Mr. James would be proud of us? The center, the scholarships, me getting better?" I looked down at this beautiful child who'd come into my life when I needed him most, who'd helped me transform grief into purpose. "I know he would be," I said. "He planned all of this, in a way. He left me a mission, and that mission led me to you." Tyler slipped his small hand into mine. "I'm glad his mission worked." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." As the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The shock of James's death, the betrayal by Vanessa, the rage and grief and determination to see justice done. Vanessa was serving 22 years in federal prison now. The trial in October had lasted 3 weeks. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours before convicting her on all counts. 7 other victims had testified. The FBI had dismantled the entire fraud ring. Justice had been served. But more importantly, James's legacy lived on. The scholarship fund had awarded its first 12 scholarships in September. Maya was thriving at UF. Isaiah had transferred to a 4-year program. Marcus was designing his first building, a community center for homeless youth. The mentorship program was expanding to 3 other Florida cities. And Tyler, my beautiful boy, was healthy and happy and dreaming of stars. "Mom," Tyler said, using the name that still made my heart swell. "Can we go home? I'm tired, but in a good way." "Of course, baby. Let's go home." As we walked back toward the car, Tyler chattered about his day. Space Camp had accepted his application for summer. His teacher wanted to submit his rocket design to a science fair. Could we maybe get a dog? I listened, responding to each question, making plans, building a future. Behind us, James's photograph remained on the beach, the stone holding it steady, the waves singing their eternal song. I'd come home too late to save my son, but I'd come home in time to honor him, to fight for him, to build something beautiful from the ashes of loss. At 63 years old, I'd found a new mission, being the mother Tyler needed, and the guardian of James's legacy. The warrior in me had won the battle against Vanessa, but the mother in me had won something far more important, a second chance at the family I'd thought I'd lost forever. That night, after Tyler was asleep with his NASA nightlight casting stars across his ceiling, I sat in James's office and opened my laptop. I'd started writing everything down, this whole story, from that cold February morning when I'd flown home, to today's sunset on the beach. Maybe someday it would help someone else facing loss, or betrayal, or the question of whether they could start over in their 60s. I titled the document, "The Last Mission, A Mother's Fight for Justice and Redemption." Then I began typing. On a cold February morning, I boarded a red-eye flight from Kabul to Miami, carrying nothing but a duffel bag and my father's pocket watch. I'm Diana Washington, 62 years old, a black woman who'd just completed 40 years in the United States Army. I thought I was flying home to surprise my son. Instead, I arrived just in time to watch him die. But that wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. I typed through the night, honoring James by telling the truth, about his courage, about Vanessa's betrayal, about justice fought and won, about a child named Tyler who helped me remember how to hope. The story of how a soldier's final mission became a mother's greatest victory, not through violence or vengeance, but through love, legacy, and the simple act of showing up, even when it hurt, even when it seemed too late, even when the battle seemed impossible to win. James had shown me the way. Tyler had given me the reason, and together we were building something that would outlast us all. 2 years later, I stood at the podium of the James Marcus Washington Center for Architectural Education's annual scholarship ceremony. The room was packed, 400 people, including the mayor, state representatives, and donors who'd helped expand the program across Florida. Tyler, now 11 and healthy, sat in the front row next to Margaret, both of them beaming with pride. On the wall behind me, James's mural smiled down, eternal in his joy and purpose. 2 years ago, I began, my voice steady and strong, my son died alone in a hospital, betrayed by someone he trusted, fighting a battle I didn't know he was facing. But in his final weeks, he built something remarkable. Not just an educational fund, but a blueprint for how to turn tragedy into hope. I gestured to the 34 students receiving scholarships this year, triple our initial class. These young people represent James's vision, that talent and potential exist everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. That every child deserves a chance to build their dreams into reality. That education is the foundation of everything else we build. The students stood, their families applauding through tears. James taught me that legacy isn't what we leave behind when we die. It's what we build while we live, and who we empower to continue building after we're gone. I looked at Tyler. And sometimes our greatest legacy isn't what we planned at all. It's the unexpected gifts that come from our pain, the children we foster, the communities we serve, the lives we touch simply by refusing to give up. I ended with James's own words, from a letter he'd written to his first mentorship students. Dream bigger than your circumstances, build stronger than your obstacles, and always, always remember, you are the architects of your own future. Make it beautiful. As I left the stage to thunderous applause, Tyler ran to me, throwing his arms around my waist. "Mr. James would be so proud of you, Mom," he whispered. "Of us," I corrected. "He'd be proud of us." We finished his mission together. That night, Tyler and I walked on the beach one more time, carrying James's photo for our ritual. But this time we added something new, a framed photo of the scholarship recipients, all 34 of them, standing beneath James's mural. "This is what we built," I told James's smiling face. "This is your legacy, and it's only getting started." Tyler placed both stones now, his smooth one for James, a rough one for his birth mother. "For the people who watch over us," he explained. We stood together as the sun set, mother and son, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, by the understanding that families are built as much as they're born. I'd flown home to surprise my son and found him dying, but in his death he had given me life, purpose, meaning, and a beautiful boy who needed exactly what I had to give. The warrior had won her last battle, the mother had found her greatest joy, and James Marcus Washington's legacy would echo through generations of students, building dreams he'd never see but had made possible. That was enough. That was everything.